Xbox On. Welcome to Xbox On, the podcast with one host about one console, the Xbox One. I am said host Jesse DeRosa, and on today's episode we'll be talking about the latest Xbox news for the week of March 5th, 2020, including coronavirus is starting to impact the year's biggest tech and gaming events, Halo Combat Evolved Anniversary has surprise launched on PC, I've finally beaten Hellblade, Senua's Saga, and more. Welcome to a weird and slow episode of Xbox On. This week just feels weird. The news is kind of light, and I'm assuming that actually has a lot to do with coronavirus. And while I hate giving more clout to this talk about this virus, because I think media is just abusing the hell out of it at this point to scare people and keep them clicking and watching. I mean, it obviously can't be ignored. It's greatly affecting, a lot of businesses, as we'll get into in today's news. But I really think by this point, Sony was planning on talking about the PS5, and maybe even Microsoft was willing to talk more, but they were waiting on Sony. But I think, honestly, coronavirus has stopped a lot of things from happening. So game news in general has kind of come to a screeching halt. And so as a result, we're left with kind of a slow news week. Aside from that, I just had a weird day today. I woke up at 4:30 this morning to go over to Disney's Hollywood Studios to ride the brand new Mickey Mouse ride that opened today. As at the time of this recording, it's Wednesday. I'm sure absolutely none of you listening are remotely interested in that, unless maybe you are. Who knows? Maybe you're into theme parks, but I'm in a very theme park state of mind today. I've just been at Disney theme park since 4:30 this morning, and I just recently got home and I am sunburnt and exhausted. But anyway, that's all unrelated information. Let's jump into this week's comments and shoutouts and all that. But actually, one quick note I did want to make. Last week's episode on YouTube, just for context, because as I said on the show, I've got nothing to prove. I've got nothing to hide. So this show isn't massively successful by any stretch of the imagination. I'm just amazed that anyone listens to this show, and I'm greatly appreciative of anyone that has ever listened to the show. But usually an episode averages out around maybe the 200 listens max between, all podcast services, SoundCloud and YouTube combined. But for some reason, last week's episode just did unusually well on all services, but namely YouTube. It broke 100 views on YouTube. Usually an episode caps out around 20, 30. So thank you so much if, for whatever reason, you are a new listener who found it on YouTube and thought there's something in particular about last week's episode that was super insightful or interesting. It must have just been, maybe I tagged it right. Maybe it was just an SEO slip up and it showed up in more people's search results. But nonetheless, I'm really happy to see that the show did well last week in particular, and just across the board, last week's listens were up tremendously. And I just want to thank you to anyone who's listened to the show. It's weird watching this show grow because, as of course, it's to an extent humbling, just because I don't know why anyone would want to listen to me rant my opinions about Xbox, considering I know absolutely nothing compared to anyone else in this industry, or anyone else in this fandom rather. It's just, there's just so many other shows to listen to, so many better shows probably, but yet people are coming in and sitting here, and it adds a little bit of pressure, I'm not going to lie, because now I feel like I have to deliver this quality podcast, whatever the hell quality is, in air quotes, because I don't think this is a very high quality podcast, but I do try to be organized and deliver something that's at least serviceable. So I guess I'm doing something right. But yeah, again, mostly to all of you. Thank you to anyone listening. But I will continue on with some more snarky sarcasm, because no one likes watching someone blush or listening to someone blush into a microphone for 10 minutes talking about themselves. So for our comments, shoutouts, a little quieter this week in terms of big, interesting, thought-provoking comments. But Dead Captain James, our regular here, comments on my commentary on the Xbox Series X Power. Now, of course, as I've mentioned before, I don't claim to know anything about hardware. I'm very illiterate with these kinds of things, so just bear with me whenever I have to talk about this stuff, because it has to be mentioned if it's in the news, but I don't know a lot. So I appreciate you, people like you, Dead Captain James, for coming out and kind of pointing out some things, because I don't know. So it's nice that you're here to help educate the audience. But nonetheless, he says, considering 12 teraflops is more powerful than a $600 PC graphics card, then yeah, I'll pay $600 for a Series X without a doubt. By the way, a teraflop, because I struggled to kind of explain what that was, he says, a teraflop is kind of like horsepower in cars. It's just that the compute power of graphics processor. There is currently only one PC GPU stronger than 12 teraflops, and it's a 2080 Ti. I assume that's one of those things that you Overwatch people are into. And then he continues on by saying, you have to keep in mind that PC parts are so expensive because they don't really have competition, so they're overpriced. But Microsoft is using AMD, and I don't believe it will be over $550 in my honest opinion. And so, yeah, I guess that's kind of true. Just because, again, I don't know. Like, I know a lot of graphics cards are made by Nvidia, but I do know a little bit more about processors, just because that talk comes up a lot more in like personal computers and cell phones, and I follow that stuff a little more closely. And I know, yeah, it usually is like, especially when it comes to like cell phones and like a lot of portable computing devices, it's almost exclusively Intel or ARM. So it's like, there's not a lot of competition. It's just these kinds of guys naming their price and dominating the market. So I guess that makes sense from that perspective. But then, yeah, you also got to keep in mind, it's like when you're buying a single graphics card to build your own PC at home, they can charge out the ass for that kind of thing. But when you're Microsoft, which is undoubtedly one of AMD's biggest customers, as Microsoft has used AMD quite a bit in their consoles, then you're going to cut Microsoft an enormously great deal, because they're going to be ordering your units by the tens of millions. So you want to offer Microsoft a really competitive deal, so they don't go to, I guess, whatever the other default competitor would be. Which, I mean, I guess it's not really Nvidia, because I'm pretty sure Microsoft, Sony, and Nintendo almost always use AMD exclusively. That's not true. I think Nintendo's used others before, but the name escapes me. Some other big one. But I mean, I know AMD is like the de facto for Xbox and PlayStation consoles in general, so that would make sense in terms of cost. Obviously they get enormously great rates and pricing. But yeah, it's, again, just if the Xbox Series X is to have like super expensive PC specs and a more affordable console, that's just going to be an amazingly competitive advantage for this console. But I also really don't think that Microsoft is all that worried, again, about getting out the largest number of units. I think, again, they're really concerned about having a slew of hardware options available for people, so that you can find the right place for each individual to play Xbox games, rather than saying everyone has to buy the one definitive box. And that's why we see, Game Pass on PC and Project xCloud on handhelds, and these rumors about new form factors of Xbox that might be a little more digital focused, or might be a little less powerful, but still be quote unquote next generation gaming. So I think all these things are all playing in together, because, again, we're trying to have a piece of hardware that caters to all corners of the market, rather than just trying to convince the market to jump on one specific box. And then our other comment this week comes from Lethal Migraine, kind of playing into more of this spec-related info on Series X. He says, according to Digital Foundry, for those of you who don't know Digital Foundry, I guess they're also a news outlet, but I really only know them for their YouTube channel. But he says the Series X will have some tech in it not even found in PCs yet. It was announced today that not only will multiple resumes work with the Xbox, you can also reboot the console and still be able to instant resume. The Digital Foundry breakdown, and he posts the link to the video, so go ahead and check out Digital Foundry if you want a really in-depth 30-minute discussion divulging all these new details about the Xbox Series X. They're always very comprehensive, and obviously know a lot more than I do, and are able to put into terms that make it easily digestible and understandable for all. So that's it for our comments from last week. As always, don't remember for future weeks, don't be shy, reply. Next, let's get into what I've been playing. But before we get into what I've been playing, let me tell you what I've been eating, which is healthy garbage. I actually got a new smartwatch this week, so I've been kind of reignited my love of step counting and things like that. My new smartwatch likes to tell me constantly two things: my heart rate is way higher than it should be, and my stress level is way higher than it should be, and I don't really know why. So I've been just trying to eat some veggies and breathe a little more, and try to maybe not push it with my edgy Mountain Dew Taco Bell lifestyle that I've so proudly assumed over these past 10, 15 years. That being said, Wendy's fast food, Wendy's burger place, that fast food, Wendy's, Wendy. They started doing breakfast this week. It looks very, very good. I've been following them on Twitter, watching people post pictures of their Wendy's breakfast items, watch Wendy's kind of throw shade at the other fast food breakfast competitors, and man, I'd like to try some of that Wendy's breakfast. So if you're not like me, if you're not trying to be healthy, please go and allow me to vicariously live through you by consuming some Wendy's breakfast. Let me know how it is. Other than that, I've also been getting the itch to go back to Chuck E. Cheese and get some Chuck E. Cheese pizza. A lot of people don't know this, but despite, if you're like me and you still enjoy Chuck E. Cheese pizza, but you obviously can't be showing up to Chuck E. Cheese locations because you'd probably be kicked out and arrested and called a pedophile, then you just go ahead and order over the phone and pick up the pizza and take it home. It's still delicious. I still love Chuck E. Cheese pizza this day. I'm not really embarrassed to say that. And frankly, if you think Chuck E. Cheese pizza is bad, it's probably because you're closeted about your love of delicious pizza, and because you're probably eating garbage pizza like some New York thin sliced bullshit. So eat a goddamn Chuck E. Cheese pizza and stop judging me. It's better than you think. All right, let's actually get into some video game talk. What I've been playing this week, it's just been one game. I finally finished Hellblade, which is just kind of sounds pathetic because it's really not a long game. It's like a 6-hour game. It's just absolutely not that long. But yeah, I finally finished playing it. I have a few more thoughts on it, and I gotta say, yes, like most people tend to say, Hellblade is very good and very unique. Actually, maybe I wouldn't say very good. It's good and it's very unique, and I appreciate a lot of the things it does with the kind of psyching out the player a lot, without getting into too many details, just because I don't want to spoil it. Although I guess at this point it's not really spoiling. The game's a few years old, but I mean there are a lot of mechanic things and kinds of conventions of gaming the game will kind of suggest to you to kind of psych you out and think you're supposed to be doing something where you're not. And there's a lot of creative twists like that. I guess one thing I'll kind of spoil, like for example, some combat scenarios you think like, am I supposed to win this combat scenario, or do I just give up because this horde never dies down? These enemies keep coming, and it's like, yeah, you're supposed to die. You're supposed to give up. It's part of what the game's trying to convey to you. And then there are just these moments where it's like, obviously you're supposed to go a certain way, but the voices in your head are telling you like, no, that's the wrong way to go. And it's kind of cool to see that, these commentaries and these kinds of plays on psychosis and being a doubtful and self-hating and self-loathing person, and just kind of seeing them play out in gameplay mechanics by just being like, you have to be defeated to progress the story, and like you're supposed to have like this really advanced audio technique where you just hear these voices in your head telling you suck and that you're going the wrong way and everything you're doing is wrong when you're in fact doing the right thing in the game. It's just really interesting, kind of like flipping conventional gameplay mechanics with like, I don't know, like commentary and story about depression and psychosis and just mental illness, and just kind of throwing it all together and seeing what comes out. And in that regard, I really commend Hellblade for being such a unique game and just venturing to do something so different, and in a lot of ways really succeeding with it. But in a lot of ways the game kind of infuriates me because sometimes I feel like it's trying so hard to be vague and cryptic and interpretable, if you can say that. Is that a word? That I feel like it's just nonsense. It's one of those games where it's like, to really get the full effect, I'm going to have to play through this game a second or third time and then read threads on the internet and maybe do some more research on these kinds of themes it's tackling and really kind of synthesize what's going on here to really pull out some meaningful commentary and value from this game. And to me, the game was just not fun enough for me to really want to do that. So that was kind of my hang up with it. Puzzle solving, which makes so much sense in the context of the game, kind of frustrates me because I hate puzzles. And while for the most part they're pretty easy, some of them were just like a little obnoxious, and I just wanted, I like the game when you're walking and listening and taking in story, and I like the game when you're doing combat, but when you're doing puzzles it's really hit or miss, and the game is very puzzle heavy. So I felt like about at least a third of the game I was just kind of constantly begrudgingly just grinding through because I just had to do puzzles. Now, the combat, I will say, while kind of simple, but intentionally so, is pretty satisfying. Now, that should come as no surprise, as Ninja Theory is obviously well known for their hack and slash, more action-oriented gameplay. And yeah, they implement it really well in this game. And there's some mechanics with the combat that just really play well, like not being able to hurt certain enemies without really earning a focus meter, and then being able to hone in and focus on your enemies to really gain like consciousness and control over yourself in the scenario. Again, playing into that whole like the message of the game and then the conventions of the mechanics of the game, and kind of pairing them nicely together. Yeah, I thought overall the combat was pretty awesome in the game, and yeah, overall I enjoyed it quite well. Like I said, I don't think I got the full effect because it's something I'd had to sit on more and think about more, and maybe even play a second time to really get the full effect of. But the game overall, like I wasn't that invested in the character or the story or the world of the game enough to really sit with it and take it that far, but I did enjoy my one playthrough. I am glad I got through it, and definitely one of those games. It feels satisfying to check it off the list. For those who are keeping count, which I know absolutely none of you are, that now marks 3 of the 5 games that I said I intended to beat last year that were on my backlog that I hadn't got to, that I've not gotten to. That is Hellblade, that is Shadow of the Tomb Raider, and What Remains of Edith Finch, meaning that the last two are Control, which I'm still waiting to either go into Game Pass or become super cheap to buy, and Red Dead Redemption 2, which I will say it's on sale this week. It's $30 right now. So last night I did download Red Dead Redemption 2. It should be fully downloaded on my Xbox now. It is happening. The wheels are turning. I am going to venture into Red Dead Redemption 2. And again, to reiterate, the reason why I was waiting for Red Dead to go on sale isn't because I don't think the game is worth $60. It's worth, I mean, just by looking at it, the sheer amount of content and detail that went into that game, it looks like it's worth way more than $60. But there is such a high probability that I'm going to give up on that game after just a few hours that I didn't want to pay full price because I don't want to, just spend money on something I'm never going to play. So that's why I was waiting so long for a sale on that one, but nonetheless, I'll get into that one soon. I don't want to jump into it quite yet. The price was right, so I bought the game, but I'm still waiting a bit because I definitely want to get into some more Anthem now that I'm done with Hellblade and kind of extensively play through at least the main content, the main missions of Anthem before jumping into something else. So that's my plan for this upcoming week. And now let's jump into some news, which I've been putting off because it is a rather slow news week. But we'll make it work because that's what we do here on Xbox On. We find a way to make a 20-minute show take an hour of your pathetic week. So let's get into the news. All right, our first story is actually pretty much our first two stories are basically the same story. So I'm kind of combined them here, but let's talk about that stupid coronavirus that won't go away. All right, so it looks like the effects of coronavirus have impacted one of the year's biggest events, as GDC organizers have announced that the 2020 Game Developers Conference has officially been canceled. The event was supposed to take place March 16th through 20th, but after so many big names like Microsoft, Sony, Amazon, Facebook pulled out over concerns of the increasingly present virus, organizers of the event thought it best to just call the event off altogether. Hopefully the event will recommence later in the year, as the official statement for it reads, quote, "We fully intend to host a GDC event later this summer," end quote. The virus has already affected numerous other spring events like Mobile World Congress, for those of you in the consumer tech hobby industry, whatever, and the Geneva Motor Show, which I assume is a car thing. Here's hoping that E3, however, is safe. And then speaking of E3, this is kind of our second story, so we'll just tackle them together. Organizers of the year's biggest event in gaming, the Electronic Entertainment Expo, or E3, have issued the following statement regarding the state of this year's event and the impact of coronavirus. Quote, "Everyone is watching this situation very closely. We will continue to be vigilant, as our first priority is health, wellness, and the safety of our exhibitors and attendees. Given what we know at this time, we are moving ahead full speed with E3 2020 planning. Exhibit and registration sales are on track for an exciting show in June," end quote. E3 is especially important for all parties involved this year, as Microsoft is planning on unveiling more details regarding the Xbox Series X during the show, and the ESA, the company that runs E3, is largely dependent on the event to earn funding and to stay afloat. So a lot riding on this year's E3, or E3 in general. So that would be a big one if we were to lose E3. So let's tackle GDC first, because GDC is one of those events I think maybe a lot of people have heard of, but maybe aren't super familiar with what it is. And it's essentially, it's not so much, for us consumers, it's more for developers and kind of the back-end people, as the name suggests. GDC is Game Developers Conference, and it's kind of a big event where, publishers and developers and kind of meet and shake hands. It's where a lot of deals are made. It's where a lot of games secure publishers. It's where a lot of independent developers secure publishers. It's where a lot of studios hire new talent for their studios. So it's a big event, and it's where a lot of things happen behind the scenes that end up, resulting in the games that we get at the end, as consumers. So it is a pretty big event. It's a big deal, and it's where, a lot of lectures and talks are held that really enlighten developers and people in the industry of emerging technologies and just kind of things going on in the games industry. It's just one of those things. It's like, I don't know how Microsoft holds their Ignite event every year. It's just one of those things to help all the creators and the engineers and the behind the scenes people to learn and connect and network and do more to help continue to improve and build more stuff for us on the consumer end of the spectrum. And then, of course, as I'm sure almost everyone, if not all, listening to the show are familiar with, there's E3, which is the more consumer focused or media focused gaming event of the year, which is when all the big guys come out and announce all their games for the year. Of course, E3 has become weaker and weaker over the years as big names continue to drop out. Notably this year, Sony's announced that they're remaining absent again. So E3 is just kind of getting smaller and smaller by the year, but nonetheless still probably the biggest event in terms of just games announcements and news and just kind of its fervor for the games industry. It is, so to speak, the Super Bowl of video games. So basically, coronavirus affecting this is, as you would assume, awful for all parties involved. GDC, like I was saying, it's just so many things happen behind the scenes, so many deals are made that this could be a massive blow to a lot of games in development, a lot of plans and projects in development. This could be the kind of thing that gets games delayed, that helps emerging games not secure publishing so that they can't come out, and just all these kinds of things. So this is a really serious one. Now they're talking about trying to push it out to the summer and trying to do GDC in the summer. But this is one of those things, like once it's pushed back and canceled like that, you're not getting it back. It's probably just canceled. So this is a pretty serious deal. And the reason why you have to cancel an event like this is because when you're dealing with the games industry, it's one of these kinds of trade shows, or it's one of those things where, people are sharing controllers, playing games, putting on VR headsets, traveling from all corners of the world. You have so many germs spreading from all over the place in so many ways, and gaming related conventions are so notorious. Not that I've ever been to one, but they're so notorious for people getting sick, people coming back from these things just sick, because there's just so many germs from everywhere just spreading in so many ways. Because you think about like a normal business conference for like any other company, and it's a lot of like meetings and panels, and just kind of at the most it's just a lot of people in a room and a lot of handshaking maybe at most. But then you go to an event like this, and it's like you got people like everyone just like passing around the controller and putting on VR headsets and just meeting developers from all over the world. And there's just a lot more kind of connectivity and personal contact where a lot more things could go wrong. So, if you are a Microsoft, a Sony, and Amazon, all these companies that are pulling out of GDC, you got to protect your main talent. You got to protect the people who you're sending out to this conference, because even though coronavirus is way less threatening and prevalent than the media has suggested otherwise, it's still something you got to be cognizant of, because they don't have a cure for it as of yet. It has killed people, and it is getting worse or spreading further. So even though it's a minute number of people, it isn't nothing, and we have to be, you have to be aware of that, especially if you're Microsoft. You're not going to send out, Phil Spencer, knowing full well it's highly unlikely he'll get sick. But like, what if you send him out and he does get sick? Then it's like, you can't just clone Phil Spencer. Not yet. You can't clone Phil Spencer, make him forwards and backwards compatible. You gotta keep the one you got. So this is just one of those things where it's an overabundance of caution, and maybe almost stupidly so, but also I think they're making the right move. Not only that, just for the kind of lawsuit hell that there could be if companies are forcing, people to attend this event and they don't feel comfortable doing so. As for E3, it looks like E3 is just like, hey, we don't really have an option. We've got to do E3. There's no way we can cancel it. So plan on E3 happening. But, think about it. In 2 months, if coronavirus has gotten worse than it already has, then we could see the ESA saying, hey, we're going to keep going with E3, but maybe everyone else pulls out. And then that's just as bad as them ending the event or canceling altogether, because the ESA fully relies on E3 pretty much in order to survive. And they cannot afford to cancel this event. They cannot let something like coronavirus get in the way. So hell or high water, they've got to put on E3 this year. But I think the bigger thing to keep an eye out on is, so yeah, E3 is going to happen, whatever comes our way, but that doesn't necessarily mean Microsoft won't pull out. That doesn't necessarily mean, Ubisoft and all these studios are going to show up and put on a show. They could pull out at any moment, and that's just a dangerous situation for the ESA. And honestly, not to make light of, a virus that has hurt and killed other people in a more tertiary sense, it does suck for all of us how that can affect our Super Bowl, so to speak, as gamers, and an opportunity. E3, the year of console releases, are always the most exciting E3s, because that's when we get to see our Sony and Microsoft's kind of go more in a punching bag kind of way with each other, and we get to see all the new features and bells and whistles of a console shown off on stage. And I don't know, that stuff's really, really fun. It'd be such a shame if we were robbed of that this year, all because of the coronavirus. So not a massive story, but still something to keep in mind and to be aware of as we move closer and closer to E3. So our next story, again, slow news week, so nothing super groundbreaking, but exciting nonetheless. Halo Combat Evolved Anniversary has surprise hit PC this week and can be downloaded right now on either Windows Store or Steam. The game alone will run players $10, although it can, of course, be played through the Master Chief Collection, which it's automatically included in when you buy, which is, of course, the best way to play it, and almost everyone should buy the Master Chief Collection unless you are the evil villain from one of the Toy Story movies in which you are a toy, so you cannot play Xbox, you idiot. Of course, the Master Chief Collection is available on Game Pass for PC, so players can also experience it that way. The game is the exact same as it is on Xbox 360 and Xbox One, allowing players to seamlessly transition between the game's classic visuals and modern enhanced visuals. Please, for the love of God, go and play this if you're a PC player. If you have fallen off the Halo bandwagon because you're a PC-only guy, go play Halo CE. It is such a classic. It never gets old, and it is awesome to see it on PC. Now, it looks like they are releasing these Halo games on PC in chronological order. So we started with Reach, and now we're on to Halo 1, and I assume they'll just go right up the list from 2 through 4 now, which I was discussing with my brother. I understand why they would do it that way. It makes perfect sense, but it's almost a shame that they won't just do like Halo 3, then Halo 4, then Halo 2 last, as I know this is a controversial take, but I am of the mindset that Halo 2 is the weakest Halo game. It just doesn't do it for me as well as the other ones do. I like Halo 2. It's a great game. I just think it's by far the weakest. But nonetheless, expect Halo 2 to be coming to PC, I'd assume kind of imminently, maybe in the next 2 months or so. It seems like they're really pumping these things out now that they already got Reach. It seems like they're just going to kind of pump them out, and I guess it makes sense. It's not too much work, I don't know, to port over. Not that I really understand, but I assume it's not too much work to really get these things moved over, as games are already built on PCs, and they already have this game built, so it's just a matter of finalizing a PC build. I'm not really sure how that works, but yeah, hopefully we'll see all the Halo Master Chief game or Halo Master Chief Collection games come to PC before Halo Infinite comes out, so that PC players can kind of catch up to speed on all the Halos before jumping into what is inevitably going to be the greatest game of 2020, 2021, and beyond, because it is Halo, baby. And I left out ODST, so hopefully ODST will be coming in there too. Maybe they'll go in order. Maybe they'll go 2, 3, ODST, and then 4. But who knows? All right, our next story of the week. Platinum Games, the team behind the canceled Scalebound and the recently released Vanquish and Bayonetta collection, are expanding with a second studio located in Tokyo. The original studio is headquartered in Osaka, Japan, but with the new team, director Hideki Kamiya looks to staff it with, quote, crazy people who want to make games, end quote. The new studio aims to bring Platinum's employee count from 240 to about 340 with 100 new employees. The new studio will be taking on projects that are unlike ones seen from the studio before, such as games as a service type games. The studio has recently announced a desire to start self-publishing and owning full rights to their games, along with some funding from Chinese gaming conglomerate Tencent. Platinum has been making lots of news lately, and as shakeups keep coming from the beloved developer. So this is a weird one. I think the big takeaway on this one for me is that they got a little bit of money from Tencent not too long ago, and now they're going to open a second studio that might be making things like games as a service games. And it's just like, yeah, that checks out. You get that seedy Chinese money, and they go, hey, you know what we like to play over here? We like to play those free-to-play hero shooters and strategy games and bullshit like that. So we're going to see Platinum Games make their, maybe they'll make their League of Legends or something like that. I don't know. It's presumptuous to, call them out like that immediately, but I'm not a massive fan of Tencent, and I'm not a massive fan of these types of games, and I think Platinum Games is such a talented and underappreciated developer that it's sad to see them make a statement like that and make these kinds of decisions when it's like, I feel like you could do better. But if that's the direction they want to head in, I understand. Platinum Games makes a lot of solo, single player, play once and you're done kind of games, and while obviously those kinds of games have a place still and they still do well for the most part, it is nice to have a game that can kind of make money in the background while you venture and do other things. You look at someone like Respawn Entertainment, who's still making single player first person games like Star Wars Jedi Fallen Order, but they're also able to just kind of keep consistently that cash flow going with Apex Legends, and they have an entire team dedicated to Apex Legends, while they have another team dedicated to other games, other non-Apex Legends related games. Although Respawn's maybe not the best example, because we all lose without the development and the confirmation of a Titanfall 3. But yeah, I think the same kind of goes for Platinum Games, where it's like, I think a lot of developers are kind of in this boat where they want to find their games as a service that they can segment another dev team within the studio to just kind of build and maintain, so that they can just kind of have this steady, constant cash flow. And if you're trying to be self-sufficient, if you're trying to operate without a publisher, this is kind of a good way to do that, because this would just kind of be like constant investment without having to need outside sources kind of funnel that money to you. And then that would allow them to do whatever the hell it is they want to do. I'm kind of the mindset that Scalebound isn't gone forever. I think, that quote from a few weeks ago, that they're kind of still interested in it, but Microsoft has the rights to the game and the IP. I kind of think that there's a future where maybe Microsoft just relinquishes the rights to Scalebound, and Platinum is able to just go ahead and make that, regardless of how close whatever they make is to what we were originally going to get. But yeah, I think something like Scalebound could be in the cards, or just something new altogether. Like I said, Platinum, they're not like a studio you can look at and really guess what they're going to make. They make shit from like The Wonderful 101 to like Bayonetta, and there's just like no consistency or parallel between any of their games, other than maybe just like crazy over the top stylish combat. So it'd be nice to see Platinum have a little more free reign and creative freedom, and just funding in general, so they can do whatever wacky shit it is they want to do, rather than have to do things like make more Legend of Korra games, like these Avatar tying games that they once made that were not very good. But nonetheless, that's what Platinum Games is up to, and hopefully that yields some positive results, because going into that games as a service territory can be really dangerous, as it's such a competitive field. So wishing you all the best. All right, and then our final story of this slow news week is coming from Windows Central. It is that Xbox head Phil Spencer, our boy Phil, always making the news, visited the Gears of War developer, the Coalition, this week, and tweeted out an update regarding Gears 5, stating that he saw some, quote, enhancements that makes Gears 5 look better than it ever has. Spencer could possibly be alluding to an Xbox Series X update to the game that would improve the game's visuals and performance, much in the way that many Xbox One games got updates with the Xbox One X when it was released in 2017. If it is to be the case, hopefully we will see more Xbox One games get some Xbox Series X updates in the years to come. Here's hoping for maybe some Halo 5 updates or something like that. This is a cool thing. This is I don't know, on the one hand, I'm like, maybe that's a waste of development time. It's like, guys, work on a new project. Gears 5 is a great game. It looks and plays great. We don't need you to keep updating it. That's just overkill. But on the other hand, it's like, how nice is that, that especially a game like Gears 5, where it's like it has a multiplayer component that lives on beyond, just the 8-hour, 10-hour campaign, where it's like, we know people are still going to be playing Gears 5 for years to come, especially until whatever the next Gears of War game is. So just because the Xbox Series X comes out doesn't mean people are going to stop playing Gears 5. So, because that's still going to be the de facto or the modern standard for Gears of War, people shouldn't have to be playing like this older last gen visual version of that game. So to kind of offer, some Xbox Series X enhancements to the game to bring it up to par with what the new console can do, it just makes it feel a little more modern and on par with the hardware you're playing it on. So I do appreciate from that point of view, but also it would be exciting to see this kind of technology spread out to other games. For example, like a game like Control, which I as I've mentioned at the top, I still haven't played it yet, but one big criticism a lot of outlets have given to Control is that the frame rate kind of stutters a lot. It doesn't look like it runs all that well on PS4 and Xbox One, and it could really use some extra console power to really make that thing be a smooth, buttery experience. And so what if Remedy was like, okay, we're going to make a Xbox Series X PS5 patch for the game that makes it run a lot better on newer hardware, and then boom, now someone like me who waited so long to play Control can just play on the Xbox Series X and have a way better experience than people who played it a year ago, because now it runs and looks better on this console. And of course, just by default, new consoles make some games run better just because they have higher specs, and so things like frame rate sometimes are just kind of normally solved a little bit. But also there's sometimes development hiccups and development reasons that hold the game back from being as visually and performance-wise impressive as it could otherwise be. So to see publishers kind of take the time to update that stuff for the Xbox Series X, I think would be really cool. Again, especially in this kind of era of more like fluid games as a service type deals, where you have a game like Apex Legends and Fortnite, which will no doubt be a big part of Xbox Series X, but they came out during the Xbox One era, so why not just make a Xbox Series X update for the game so it just looks way more next gen, for a game like Apex Legends. So hopefully that's what this is kind of alluding to, is that, we saw a lot of this when Xbox One X came out, and hopefully we can expect to see a lot more of it as we move into the Xbox Series X kind of era. So that's why I took that as. Otherwise, maybe Phil Spencer is just at the coalition because he's like, you guys lost Rod Ferguson. Now I need y'all to line up one by one and bend over my lap so I can give you each a spanking, because now this studio has no daddy. So maybe, I don't know, maybe that was it. Like I said, really slow news week, so I do apologize for the lack of not only quantity of news stories, but just some really meaty, interesting stories. I feel like all those were kind of what they were, but I don't control the news. I just report it. I'm just a reporter, so I do have a couple little tidbit stories, some small ones. Two of them actually. The first one's pretty neat if you're like me and you like this game. So despite leaving the digital storefronts last year, Capcom have announced that 2013's DuckTales Remastered has once again been brought back to PS3, Xbox 360, Xbox One via backwards compatibility, Wii U, and Steam. So if you were one of the miss the boat kind of people who didn't download this game before it was taken down from storefronts last year, it's back. So go ahead and download it now. Just secure that shit before it ever goes away again. But that's cool. That's the second time we've seen this happen. Last week we saw that happen with Castle of Illusions, and now we're seeing that with DuckTales. So it looks like there's some hope for all these games that kind of just lose their IP rights and then disappear off digital storefronts forever. So these are some promising stories here. The other one is that Jason Blundell, co-studio head of Treyarch, has announced that he will be leaving the studio. Blundell is most notable for directing Call of Duty Black Ops and directing the popular Zombies Horde mode. At the time of this writing, there is no word on where he will end up next, but I am wishing him the very best and thanking him, of course, for Call of Duty World at War Nazi Zombies, which was an absolute magnificent game mode. It was not only the first venture into the zombies mode Call of Duty ever did, but it was also the best they ever did. And I still think about, how goddamn fun it was to play those old Nazi zombie maps back in the Call of Duty World at War days, back when we were innocent, back when Joe Biden was the vice president and not whatever the hell he is now. Now that I've lost half my Democratic audience, let's jump into the new game releases of the week from Xbox Wire. There are a total of 5 games coming to Xbox this week. All 5 of them I'm going to read to you right now. There's proof that's a slow news week. There's only 5 games coming to Xbox. Normally that list is 20-something long, and I had to bullshit my way through it. But now we have the time to go through them one by one and give each of these 5 games the proper attention they deserve. Oh boy, our first game is called Amoeba Battle. In this game, you will play as a robot surrounded by amoeba, and it is your duty to destroy the amoeba. It is an RTS game, but it is in the art style of Ori and the Blind Forest. But it is not Ori and the Blind Forest. So just wait another goddamn week, show some fucking patience, and play Ori and the Will of the Wisps next week when it comes out. Our next game here is called Tom Clancy's The Division 2 Warlords of New York Edition, March 3rd, Xbox on Xbox One X Enhanced. That's a long-ass title, which means that's probably a really long game. So if you're interested in getting a lot of bang for your buck, I'm going to highly recommend this game. Now, I will say, in the screenshot, looks like there's a recruit. He has a backpack. He's well-equipped. He has an assault rifle. This gentleman has a fine haircut, and he is taking orders from someone with an eye patch. And this person with the eye patch is pointing to locations on a map. I assume she's giving him directions. She's giving him an assignment, but not to be insensitive to those that are visually impaired. But if I'm a guy who's well prepared, I got a flashlight, I got a backpack, possibly some rations, some med kits, and an assault rifle. I'm not taking orders from someone who sees half of what I see. So hopefully this game has some true player agency and you're able to just mow them down and go about your own way. And if not, you can just play Grand Theft Auto 5 because that's what that game does. And our next game is called Syrup and the Ultimate Sweet. This is one of those games where you play as an anime girl. One of them's a cat, one of them's a lollipop, one of them has blue hair, and just kind of furthering that narrative that all the anime girls and all the weeaboo girls like cats and like to exhibit cat-like behavior, which is fucking weird. This is a game that allows you to live out that fantasy. You have a tail, so you don't have to worry about that. You have an additional limb. You got dialogue skill trees, probably, I assume, and you can. Let me just read this on-screen text from the screenshot. It says, "Meow wow, where'd you get such an impressive golem? I thought you hated magic things, nya." So if you play that game, you're the reason coronavirus is happening. So I hope you feel all the weight of those 3,000 deaths if you download this fucking game. It's called Syrup in the Ultimate Suite. Definitely recommend playing it. Awesome game. Our next game is called Baron. Fur is gonna fly. This basically looks like some fucking furry ass Super Smash Bros. Yeah. So, I mean, if you want to play as a variety of animals, including a shrimp, this is literally a tiny shrimp, then yeah, you can play this awesome fighter. It is it actually exactly that. So yeah, it's Xbox One X enhanced, so you'll get to see all the details on that shrimp. Our next game is called 60 Seconds. Comes out March 6th, which is a great day for a game to come out. It is a dark comedy atomic adventure of scavenging and survival. Basically, what we're getting from the screenshot here, though, is there are two people in the house. One of the chairs has been knocked over in this living room, and you are just kind of exploring the environment. But the bigger thing at hand here is that you have a selection of like an inventory selection of emotes and options, and one of them is a waved hand, one of them is a neutral face, another one is a neutral face but with a lighter tone, and then the last one just looks like gun bullets. So I assume this is like one of those things where it's like, here you are in a home, you're looking at your home, you've already knocked over a chair. Do you want to wave at your wife with a neutral face and be like, hey, I take ownership of this fallen chair, I will pick it up and I apologize for my mistake? Or do you want to perhaps pull out some bullets and make a threat? I guess it's like most games today, it's all about player agency. So now you have the choice. Do you want to pick up this chair, or do you want to start shooting some people in your own home? And then in the corner there's like a timer, so it looks like you have to make these decisions in a set amount of time. But yeah, that's it for our new games of the week. As a reminder, you got your games with gold. So for the month of March, we've got Batman: The Enemy Within, the complete season. Download that shit. It's March. You got no excuse. Then we got Shanti the Half Genie Hero, which I feel like has been on Games of Gold before, but I guess not. But it's available the second half of March through the first half of April. Then on the Xbox 360 side, you've got Castlevania Lords of Shadow 2, which is available now through the 15th. And then lastly, you got Sonic Generations available from March 16th to March 31st. You got to go fast. It's such a fucking good game. You got to play Sonic Generations because it has a little remade level of every Sonic game forever, starting from Sonic 1, Sonic 2, Sonic 3, Knuckles, Sonic Adventure 2, Sonic Heroes, Sonic 06, Sonic Unleashed, and then Sonic Colors. It is such a fantastic game. Let me tell you what, there are daytime levels, only no Werehog levels, and then there's some 2D Sonic levels, but the really important thing is it mixes up every level. It's so good. There's some songs from Cash. They redo City Escape from Sonic Adventure 2. If you don't know what song that is, it's the one that you remember from Sonic Adventure 2 with the surfboard. It's the one that all the 90s kids remember about Sonic. It's the one thing we pretend wasn't stupid about Sonic because that song is undoubtedly cool. Please play this game. It's so awesome, and yes, you can go so fast, and it controls well anyway, and if you have a problem with it, you can suck my insert noun. It's such a good game. Please play Sonic Generations. If it's the only thing I can ask of you. I feel so off. I feel so off this week. I'm sorry if this is a weird week. I promise we'll be back next week. I'm running off like 0 hours of sleep, and it's just been a weird news week. But if this week is a testament to anything, it's that this show will always be out each and every Thursday, regardless of quality. I want you to know that. My promise to you is that you will always get an episode of Xbox On, regardless of whether or not it is a quality episode of Xbox On. And maybe that is why we've hit over 100 YouTube views. So thank you so much, as always, for listening. If you'd like to follow me on social media, you can absolutely do so. I am only on the dark web, though, so you'll have to look me up there. But yeah, find me. And then aside from that, good buddy Eric, who I haven't spoken to in months, so I don't know why I'm calling you good buddy Eric. Where the hell are you? I see you keep playing Dead by Daylight or whatever that game is. If maybe you want to be a real man, you can come over here and play, I don't know, play some Halo, play some Apex Legends. We can play a game where you do fun stuff instead of just chase scary people around a map. That'd be nice. I miss you. Nonetheless, here's a song from Eric. Fucking freak.
Sweet.